The Grandview Hotel ballroom sparkled like a jewelry box tipped sideways. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors. Champagne flutes clinked in a rhythm that sounded like money counting itself. Marcus Whitmore stood at the center of it all, holding court. His tailored navy suit caught the light differently than everyone else's. He laughed at something his business partner said, the sound carrying across conversations. Then the crowd parted slightly. A woman in a plain housekeeping uniform approached. Grace Williams moved with quiet purpose, her emerald green cardigan worn thin at the elbows. She carried a small package wrapped in brown paper. The conversations nearest Marcus stuttered to silence. Grace stopped 3 feet away. Her dark eyes met his without apology. "Mr. Whitmore," she said. Her voice was steady. "I need to give you something." Marcus's eyebrow lifted. Around him, guests exchanged glances. A maid, at his charity gala, approaching him directly. "Security's clearly asleep," he said. Laughter rippled through the circle. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "I do." Grace extended the package. "That's why I'm here." Marcus took it with 2 fingers as if it might be contaminated. How thoughtful. "Let me guess. A handwritten plea for money." More laughter. Grace didn't flinch. He tore the paper carelessly. The box inside was old, velvet worn to gray. He flipped it open with his thumb. The laughter died in his throat. Inside, nestled in faded silk, lay a gold pocket watch. Intricate engravings covered its surface. The initials EW gleamed under the chandelier light. Marcus's hand began to shake. He looked up, but Grace was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd of gowns and tuxedos. The watch ticked against his palm like a heartbeat. He'd forgotten existed. Marcus. Whitmore hadn't built his empire. He'd inherited bones and added steel. His grandfather established the foundation. His father expanded it. Marcus weaponized it. At 47, he controlled hotels, real estate, investment portfolios that moved markets. Forbes called him the Silver Architect. His competitors called him ruthless. Both were correct. He hosted this annual charity gala because reputation required it. 500 guests, $30,000 tables, cameras documenting his generosity. The money went to causes his PR team selected. Marcus himself rarely remembered which ones. His penthouse suite occupied the hotel's 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a painting he owned. He lived alone by choice. Relationships required vulnerability. Vulnerability was a liability. Across the city, in a neighborhood his limousine never entered, Grace Williams finished her first shift. She worked housekeeping at the Grandview, 8 to 4. Then she worked banquet service at the Harbor Inn, 6 to midnight, 2 jobs, 7 days a week, 16 years. Her daughter Maya was 17 now, applying to colleges Grace couldn't afford. Maya's father died when she was 2. A construction accident, no life insurance, no safety net. Grace learned quickly that the world didn't pause for grief. She rented a studio apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin enough to hear conversations through them. But it was clean. It was safe. It was hers. Grace had worked at the Grandview for 12 years. She knew which guests left tips, which ones left messes. She knew Marcus Whitmore stayed in the presidential suite twice a month, always alone, never acknowledging staff. She'd cleaned his suite yesterday morning. That's when she found the donation box. His mother had died 8 months ago. The hotel stored her belongings in a service closet, waiting for Marcus to claim them. He never did. Last week, management donated everything to St. Catherine's Church. Grace volunteered at St. Catherine's every Sunday. She sorted donations, served soup, organized clothing drives. Yesterday, unpacking boxes in the church basement, she found it. The pocket watch. The initials. The memory that came flooding back. She knew exactly who it belonged to. And she knew what she had to do. 2 hours before the ballroom confrontation, Grace stood outside Marcus's suite. Her keycard trembled against the lock. The door clicked open. The suite smelled like expensive cologne and emptiness. Grace rolled her cleaning cart inside. She'd done this routine 1,000 times. Strip beds, replace towels, vacuum in diagonal lines. But today felt different. The donation box sat in the corner where management left it. Grace had processed half its contents at the church. The other half waited. She opened the box with careful hands. Photo albums, a jewelry case, letters bundled in ribbon, and beneath it all, wrapped in tissue paper, the watch. Grace lifted it like something sacred. The gold caught afternoon light from the windows. She turned it over. The initials stood clear, E.W. Elijah Whitmore. The memory hit her like a wave. She was 7 years old, standing in a soup kitchen line with her mother, winter wind rattling the windows, her stomach empty for 2 days. An old man with kind eyes ladled soup into her bowl. He wore a watch on a chain, gold against his vest. "Don't look so sad, little one," he'd said. "Hard times pass. Kindness doesn't." Her mother was crying. They'd been evicted that morning. The old man noticed. After the meal, he pressed something into her mother's hand. "Enough money for a motel room. Enough to survive 1 more week." "Who was that?" Grace had asked. "An angel," her mother whispered. Remember his face, Grace never forgot. And years later, when she saw Marcus Whitmore's photograph in the newspaper, she recognized the resemblance. The same jawline, the same eyes, though Marcus's were colder. She'd asked older volunteers at St. Catherine's. They remembered Elijah Whitmore, served soup every Wednesday for 20 years. Never wanted recognition, died in 1995. The watch in Grace's hands was his legacy. And it had been buried in a donation box, forgotten. She made her decision standing in that empty suite. She wrapped the watch in brown paper. She found an old box in the supply closet. She waited until the charity gala began. Marcus Whitmore would get his grandfather's watch back, but he'd get it publicly, where he couldn't ignore what it meant, where he couldn't pretend not to see her. Grace walked into that ballroom knowing she might lose her job. She did it anyway. Some things mattered more than paychecks. The look on Marcus's face when he opened that box, shock, recognition, something almost like pain, told her she'd made the right choice, even if the laughter still echoed in her ears, even if her hands still shook. She'd returned something precious to a man who'd forgotten how to value anything at all. Marcus stood frozen on the ballroom floor. The watch weighed almost nothing. It felt like an anchor. Around him, conversations resumed slowly. Guests pretended not to stare. His business partner, Richard, touched his elbow. "Marcus, you all right?" He couldn't answer. His thumb traced the engravings. His grandfather's initials, worn smooth by decades of touch. The last time he'd seen this watch, he was 12 years old. His grandfather's funeral. An open casket. The watch tucked into the old man's vest pocket. Someone had stolen it that night, probably during the reception, when the family was distracted by grief. His father had discovered it missing the next morning, found the casket disturbed. The theft broke something in his father. Marcus watched him spend hundreds of thousands trying to recover it. Private investigators, reward offers. Nothing worked. His father died angry, convinced the world was full of thieves. Marcus inherited that conviction along with the fortune. He'd built walls after that. Never trust easily. Never show weakness. Never let anyone close enough to take what mattered. And now this watch sat in his palm, returned by a woman he'd mocked in front of 500 people. A maid, in a worn cardigan, with eyes that held no greed, only sadness. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. She stole it. She's blackmailing him. This is a setup. But the way she'd walked away, no demands, no threats, no lingering for gratitude, it didn't fit the pattern. His chest felt tight. The ballroom suddenly seemed too bright, too loud, too full of people who didn't matter. He closed the box with a snap. The sound felt final, like something ending or beginning. He couldn't tell which. Marcus was 12 when his grandfather taught him about the watch. Summer morning, his grandfather's study smelling like pipe tobacco and old books. "Come here, boy." Elijah Whitmore sat in his leather chair, the watch in his weathered hands. He wound it with practiced movements. "This watch belonged to my father, and his father before him." Marcus leaned against the armrest, fascinated. "Is it valuable?" "In ways you can't spend." His grandfather smiled. "See these engravings?" Each generation added their initials. "EW, that's me. One day your father will add his. Then you. What if someone steals it?" His grandfather's expression shifted, became serious. "Marcus, listen carefully. Things can be stolen. Money can be lost. But what you are, your character, your integrity, that's yours forever, unless you give it away." He tapped the watch. "This has witnessed 3 generations of men who understood that. Never forget it." Marcus remembered nodding solemnly, not fully understanding. 3 months later, his grandfather died. Heart attack, sudden and final. The funeral was enormous. Business associates, politicians, society figures Marcus didn't recognize. His father was devastated. Marcus had never seen him cry before. The watch went into the casket as tradition demanded. He should have it with him, his father said. Then came the theft. The empty casket. The missing watch. His father changed after that. He stopped smiling. Started sleeping with a gun under his pillow. Accused staff members without proof. Fired people for minor mistakes. Convinced everyone was dishonest. Marcus watched his father corrode from the inside. The man who'd been warm became cold. Generous became suspicious. The theft had stolen more than gold. When his father died, stress-induced heart attack at 62, Marcus inherited everything. The fortune, the business, the bitterness. He'd promised himself he'd never be vulnerable like his father, never care about anything deeply enough that losing it would break him. He'd kept that promise for 25 years, and now, standing in this ballroom, he realized what it had cost him. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "What you are, that's yours forever, unless you give it away." Marcus looked down at the watch in his hands. He'd given away everything that mattered, trying to protect what didn't. Marcus found the hotel security office on the 3rd floor. His heart hammered against his ribs. He needed answers. He needed to understand. The head of security pulled up employee records. Grace Williams, 43 years old. Housekeeping staff, 12 years employed here. Perfect record, never late, never complained. 3 Employee of the Month awards. Where is she now? Off duty. She clocked out 20 minutes ago. Marcus checked his watch. The new one on his wrist, expensive and meaningless. Where does she go after her shift? The security guard hesitated. "Sir, I can't really... I'm not asking permission." Marcus's voice carried the weight of ownership. "Where? Service entrance. She usually catches the bus on 4th Street. Marcus took the elevator down. The service corridor was concrete and fluorescent light. Nothing like the marble elegance upstairs. He'd never been down here. Never had reason to see where the invisible people worked. He found Grace near the time clock, pulling a worn coat over her cardigan. She saw him approaching and straightened. No fear in her posture, just weariness. "Where did you get the watch?" Marcus kept his voice level. "Tell me the truth." Grace met his eyes. "Your mother donated her belongings to St. Catherine's Church." "I volunteer there. I found it yesterday. My mother donated..." He stopped. "His mother's estate." He'd told his assistant to handle it, hadn't wanted to sort through her things himself. "You work at a church?" "Every Sunday." 12 years. Grace's voice was quiet but steady. "I sort donations, serve meals, help families like mine used to be." Marcus's suspicion warred with something else. Curiosity, maybe. "And you recognized the watch?" "I recognized your grandfather." Grace's expression softened. "Mr. Elijah Whitmore. He served soup at St. Catherine's every Wednesday for 20 years. Never wanted publicity. Just showed up, helped, went home. The words didn't make sense. His grandfather, the business titan, serving soup. So that's impossible. He started in 1975, stopped in 1995 when he died. Grace pulled something from her pocket, a faded photograph, creased from years of handling. "This is him." Marcus took it with shaking hands. The image was grainy, probably from a disposable camera, but clear enough. His grandfather wearing an apron, ladling soup. Behind him, a banner read, "St. Catherine's Community Kitchen. He helped my family when we had nothing," Grace continued. "I was 7. We'd been evicted." My mother was crying. "He gave her money for a motel room. Told us kindness doesn't pass with hard times." Her eyes glistened. "When I found his watch buried in a donation box, forgotten like trash, I couldn't let it stay that way. He deserved better. His memory deserved better." Marcus stared at the photograph. At this version of his grandfather he'd never known. The man who'd taught him about integrity had lived it in secret. Serving people Marcus wouldn't notice if they were on fire. His throat felt tight. "Why didn't you just mail it? Why risk your job confronting me publicly?" Grace's smile was sad. "Because mailing it would have been safe. And your grandfather taught me that sometimes the right thing isn't the safe thing." She took the photograph back gently. "I wanted you to see what you'd forgotten, even if it cost me everything." She turned to leave. Marcus stood in that harsh fluorescent light, watching her walk away. Understanding finally cracking through his certainty like ice breaking in spring. He'd spent 25 years building walls against thieves, and he'd never noticed the truth walking past him every single day. Marcus returned to the ballroom in a daze. The photograph burned in his jacket pocket. His grandfather serving soup. Her secret life of service. Richard intercepted him immediately. "There you are. What was that scene about?" His business partner's eyes gleamed with curiosity. "Some maid with a stolen heirloom." "It wasn't stolen." Marcus's voice sounded distant to his own ears. "She found it." "Returned it." "Found it?" Richard's laugh was sharp. Marcus, think clearly. Hotel staff don't just find priceless antiques and return them. They pawn them. She's running some kind of angle, Marcus wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. 25 years of suspicion couldn't evaporate in one conversation. "I verified her story," he said finally. "My mother's donations went to St. Catherine's Church. Grace volunteers there. St. Catherine's?" Richard's eyebrows lifted. "That soup kitchen downtown?" "Marcus, that place is full of—" He stopped himself. "Look, all I'm saying is be careful. People like that, they know how to play on sympathy. People like that." The words settled like poison in Marcus's stomach. He thought of his grandfather's face in that photograph, thought of Grace's steady eyes holding no malice despite his mockery. "She told me about my grandfather," Marcus said quietly, "that he volunteered there. Every Wednesday for 20 years, Richard paused, then smiled carefully. "Your grandfather was a charitable man. Wrote a lot of checks to good causes. That's admirable. He didn't write checks. He served soup. Personally, anonymously." The smile flickered. "Well, that's unexpected." Richard's tone shifted, became gentler, almost patronizing. "Marcus, grief does strange things. Your mother just passed. This woman tells you a heartwarming story about your grandfather. Returns this watch. It feels meaningful. But con artists are very good at crafting narratives." Marcus looked around the ballroom. 500 people in designer clothes, drinking champagne that cost more than Grace probably earned in a week. None of them knew his grandfather's real legacy. None of them cared. "Maybe you're right," he heard himself say. Richard clapped his shoulder. "Of course I am. Now let's get back to the donors. Senator Phillips wants to discuss that development project." Marcus nodded. He let himself be steered back into conversations about money and influence. But his mind remained in that concrete corridor, watching Grace walk away with quiet dignity. For the first time in years, he wondered if he'd built his walls in the wrong direction. Marcus endured another hour of small talk. His face ached from smiling. The watch sat heavy in his pocket. He was considering leaving early when Richard appeared again. This time his expression was serious. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I've handled the situation with that maid." Marcus's attention sharpened. "What situation?" "Well, you seemed confused earlier. Understandably, she caught you off guard." Richard's voice dropped. "So I called hotel security. And the police. They're investigating her for theft." The ballroom tilted. "You did what?" "I protected you. That woman somehow got hold of a priceless family heirloom. Whether she found it or stole it, she approached you inappropriately, made a scene. Security needs to verify her story. Richard, I told you she didn't steal it, and I'm sure that's what she claimed." Richard's smile was patient. "Marcus, think. A maid conveniently finds your grandfather's watch and returns it during your highest-profile event of the year. That's either incredible coincidence or calculated manipulation." Across the ballroom near the main entrance, 2 uniformed police officers spoke with hotel security. They were scanning the room, clearly looking for someone. Marcus's chest constricted. "Call them off, now." "I can't. I already filed the report as a witness to suspicious activity." Richard's hand on his shoulder felt like a vice. "It's out of our hands now. But don't worry. If she's innocent, she'll be fine. And if she's not, you're protected." The officers turned, started walking with purpose toward the service corridor. Grace had left through the service entrance. She was probably on a bus by now, heading home. Heading toward police who thought she was a thief. Marcus pulled away from Richard. "Where are they going?" "To question her, I assume. Standard procedure." Marcus didn't wait for the rest. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring protests and confused stares. He reached the corridor as the officers disappeared through the service door. His phone was in his hand. He needed to call them off, needed to explain, needed to stop this before an innocent woman was arrested for an act of kindness. Before his silence became complicity. Before he proved every lesson his grandfather tried to teach him had died in that casket 30 years ago. Marcus ran. Grace sat in a windowless security office. 2 police officers stood near the door. A hotel security guard reviewed footage on a computer screen. "Ms. Williams, let's go through this again." The older officer's voice was professional but cold. "You claim you found this watch in church donations?" "I did find it." Grace kept her hands folded in her lap. "They wanted to shake. She wouldn't let them. St. Catherine's Church received donations from the Grandview Hotel last week. I was sorting them Sunday. The watch was there. And you decided to return it during a private charity event? Approaching Mr. Whitmore directly, I wanted to make sure he received it personally." The younger officer exchanged a glance with his partner. Grace knew that look. She'd seen it her whole life. The assumption, the conclusion already drawn, a black woman. A billionaire's heirloom. The math was simple in their minds. "Ms. Williams' housekeeping staff have access to guest suites." The older officer leaned against the table. "Mr. Whitmore stays in the presidential suite regularly." "You clean that room?" "Sometimes. When I'm assigned to that floor. So you'd have opportunity to take items from his room." Grace's jaw tightened. "I didn't take anything. I returned something." "Right. The watch his mother allegedly donated." The officer pulled out a notepad. "We'll need to verify that. Do you have documentation? Receipts? Any proof these donations occurred?" "The church has records. Father Benedict can confirm." "We'll follow up on that. In the meantime, the watch is evidence." He gestured to a plastic bag on the table. The gold gleamed dully through clear polymer. Grace stared at it. That watch had survived 3 generations, witnessed kindness and integrity. Now it sat in an evidence bag, and she sat under interrogation for trying to honor what it represented. Her phone buzzed in her purse. Maya, probably, wondering why she wasn't home yet. Grace couldn't answer. They'd taken her phone when they brought her in here. She thought about her daughter applying to colleges. Thought about her spotless work record. Thought about everything she could lose because she'd tried to do the right thing. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Grace closed her eyes briefly. Her mother's voice echoed from childhood. "Baby, sometimes the world punishes kindness. But you do it anyway. That's what makes you different." Grace opened her eyes, met the officer's skeptical gaze. "I told you the truth," she said quietly. "That's all I have." The watch ticked in its plastic prison. Grace wondered if Elijah Whitmore had ever imagined it would end up like this. Marcus burst into the hotel administrative offices. His assistant looked up, startled. "Mr. Whitmore." "The gala, my mother's estate. The items we donated." "Where did they go?" "St. Catherine's Church, as you requested. The receipts are in the—" "I need those receipts now." She pulled files with shaking hands. Marcus grabbed them, scanning frantically. Their itemized donation list. Date, contents, signature from Father Benedict confirming receipt. One line made him stop. Miscellaneous jewelry box, contents uncatalogued. The watch. His mother must have stored it years ago, forgotten where she'd put it. And Grace had found it, sorting through boxes no one else wanted to touch. Marcus pulled out his phone. "Called St. Catherine's," a tired voice answered after 5 rings. "Father Benedict? This is Marcus Whitmore. I need to ask you about Grace Williams." A pause. "Marcus, Elijah's grandson. You knew my grandfather?" "For 20 years. The priest's voice warmed. "He was a saint. Served every Wednesday without fail. When he died, we were heartbroken." Marcus's eyes burned. "And Grace Williams? She volunteers there?" "Every Sunday since her husband died. 16 years of service. Sorts donations, serves meals, organizes clothing drives. She's one of our most dedicated volunteers." Father Benedict's tone shifted. "Why, is she all right?" "She's being questioned by police. They think she stole my grandfather's watch." "What?" The priest's shock was genuine. "That's absurd. Grace is the most honest person I know. If she had that watch, she found it exactly as she claimed." Marcus closed his eyes. Shame burned through him like acid. "Can you document her volunteer work? Her character? I need proof. I'll email you everything immediately." "But Marcus, your grandfather would be devastated to know an innocent woman is suffering because of his watch. He valued people over possessions." Always, the words hit like a punch. Marcus ended the call, pulled up his mother's attorney. "I need you to verify donation records from her estate. Send them to police immediately." Then he ran toward the security offices. His polished shoes slipped on marble. Guests stared as he passed. He didn't care. Richard caught his arm in the corridor. "Marcus, where are you going?" "To fix your mistake." "Mistake?" "I protected you. You accused an innocent woman." Marcus jerked free. "Grace Williams volunteers at St. Catherine's. Has for 16 years. My grandfather served there for 20 years. She found the watch in my mother's donations and returned it because she's honest. Everything she said was true." Richard's expression flickered. "You can't know that for certain." "I do know. I verified everything. And now she's in a security office being treated like a criminal because I was too suspicious to see the truth standing in front of me." Marcus stepped closer. "My grandfather spent his life helping people like Grace, and I spent mine becoming exactly what he'd be ashamed of." He didn't wait for Richard's response. The security office door stood 20 feet away. Marcus pushed through it, heart hammering, praying he wasn't too late to stop the damage his silence had caused. Marcus burst through the security office door. Grace sat at a table, officers flanking her. She looked small under harsh lighting, but her spine was straight, her dignity intact. "Stop." Marcus's voice cut through the room. "She's innocent." Everyone turned. The older officer frowned. "Mr. Whitmore, we're conducting an investigation." "There's nothing to investigate." Marcus strode to the table. His phone was already open, emails loading. "Grace Williams found my family heirloom in church donations. She returned it at personal risk. There's no theft here, only integrity. Sir, we have procedures, then follow them." Marcus thrust his phone forward. "Here, donation records from my mother's estate. Dated last week. St. Catherine's Church received all items, including miscellaneous jewelry. He swiped to the next email. Statement from Father Benedict confirming Grace Williams has volunteered there every Sunday for 16 years. Perfect record of service. The younger officer leaned in, reading. His expression shifted. Marcus turned to Grace. Their eyes met across the table. I owe you an apology. You returned something priceless, and I repaid you with suspicion and mockery. Grace's eyes glistened. She said nothing. Just watched him. My grandfather taught me that character matters more than possessions. That integrity can't be stolen. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. You remembered his lesson. I forgot it. He turned back to the officers. Grace Williams is innocent. More than innocent. She's been honest in a situation where dishonesty would have been easier and more profitable. She could have pawned that watch, could have kept it, could have demanded a reward. He gestured to the evidence bag. Instead, she returned it publicly, knowing it might cost her job. That's not criminal behavior. That's courage. The older officer cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore, are you declining to press charges? There are no charges to press. There never were. Marcus glanced at the security guard. Someone called you prematurely. Without my authorization, without investigating the facts. Richard appeared in the doorway. Marcus, I was trying to help. You weren't helping. You were assuming. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You saw a woman who didn't fit your expectations of honesty, so you decided she must be dishonest. That says more about you than her. Silence filled the office. The younger officer looked at his partner. Sir, if Mr. Whitmore confirms no theft occurred, then Miss Williams is free to go. The older officer nodded to Grace. Ma'am, I apologize for the inconvenience. Grace stood slowly. She collected her purse, her coat. Her hands were steady now. Marcus stepped forward. He held out the evidence bag. This is yours. My grandfather would want you to have it. No. Grace's voice was quiet but firm. It belongs with your family. It always did. Then let me give it to you as thanks. I don't want thanks. Grace met his eyes. I wanted you to remember who your grandfather was, what he valued, what he taught. She smiled sadly. Keep the watch, Mr. Whitmore, and remember the man who wore it. That's the only payment I need. She walked past him, past Richard, past the officers. Her footsteps echoed down the concrete corridor. Marcus stood holding the watch, finally understanding what his grandfather had tried to teach him. That the richest people aren't those who have the most. They're those who give the most, who see the most, who honor truth over comfort. Grace Williams had nothing compared to his fortune, but she was wealthier than he'd ever been. Marcus didn't return to the gala. He sat in his limousine outside the Grandview, watching the city lights blur through tinted windows. The watch lay open in his palm. His grandfather's initials, his father's initials, a space waiting for his own. But what would his initials represent? What legacy was he building? His phone showed 53 missed calls. Donors wanting attention, business partners demanding explanations, Richard asking where he'd gone. Marcus ignored them all. He called his assistant instead. Clear my schedule tomorrow morning. I need the address for St. Catherine's Church. The soup kitchen? Sir, you don't have any appointments. I'm making one. Also, I want Grace Williams's file. I'm giving her 6 months paid leave, full benefits, and a college scholarship fund for her daughter. His assistant was silent for a moment. Mr. Whitmore, is everything all right? No, Marcus said quietly. But it's going to be. He ended the call. Close the watch. Let the darkness of the limousine settle around him. Across town, Grace boarded her usual bus. Her daughter Maya was waiting at home, worried. Grace would tell her about the billionaire who finally learned to listen. About standing up for truth even when it costs you. About how her grandfather's kindness had echoed across 30 years. She'd tell Maya that integrity isn't about grand gestures. It's about small choices made when no one important is watching. Grace smiled out the bus window. The city lights reflected in the glass. She was exhausted. Her shift started again in 8 hours, but she'd done the right thing. And somehow, miraculously, the world hadn't punished her for it. The watch was where it belonged. The truth had been spoken. And maybe, just maybe, one person had remembered what really mattered. That was enough. 3 months later, Marcus Whitmore served soup at St. Catherine's Church. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows. An apron covered his shirt. Grace worked beside him, ladling vegetables. Her daughter Maya organized donations in the back room. She'd received a full scholarship to a university. Accepted, enrolled, thriving. "You're getting better at this," Grace said. Her smile was genuine now. Warm. Marcus laughed. "My grandfather apparently had decades of practice. I'm just learning." They'd become unlikely friends, connected by a watch and a lesson neither would forget. Marcus had stepped back from Richard's company, started projects focused on service rather than profit. The Grandview now partnered with St. Catherine's, providing jobs and resources. The watch sat in the City Museum now, behind glass with a plaque reading, "Elijah Whitmore, business leader, silent servant." This watch witnessed 3 generations. May we all witness truth with such integrity. An elderly woman approached the serving line. Grace filled her bowl with practiced kindness. Marcus watched, learning what his grandfather had known all along, that wealth isn't counted in bank accounts. It's measured in moments like this, serving, seeing, honoring the dignity in every person who walks through the door. His grandfather had tried to teach him. His father had forgotten. Grace had remembered. And now Marcus understood that the greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's wisdom passed through generations. It's choosing kindness when cruelty is easier. It's recognizing that everyone deserves to be seen. The watch had come home. But more importantly, so had the truth. Sometimes we chase treasures our whole lives only to discover the real treasure was standing in front of us all along. Sometimes the poorest among us are richest in courage. Sometimes a billionaire needs a maid to teach him what his grandfather knew. That privilege is a responsibility, not a trophy. And sometimes, just sometimes, returning what was lost means finding what matters most. Every treasure we chase is worthless until we learn to see the treasures standing right in front of us.